States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I want to remind you that we are on a recorded, our meeting is being recorded, and that please be aware of your comments, both publicly and privately. So, our first order of business is guest and audience comments. We have no follow-on questions from our last meeting specifically to address, so I'll just open the floor to anyone that would like to speak if there is any. At this time, there are none, so we'll move forward with our agenda. First of all, before I begin, I just want to make sure everyone has a copy of the agenda and you've had an opportunity to look at it. Are there any changes, additions, corrections, or deletions you'd like to make?
Chairman?
Yes.
A couple, sort of. Shared services report. Did I miss something? We don't give those anymore?
So in substitute of the share services report, what I've been instructed Cindy to do for us, please, is to include the first selectman's report and cover the highlighted areas there. And if there's something within that report on shared services you want covered, we can do that.
Okay. All right, the next item is, I'd like to present the highlights, what I see as the highlights.
Yeah, we'll bring that up. That's included. That won't be a change. That'll be under new business.
Okay, thank you very much.
Very good. Anything else?
Okay. I didn't capture a motion in a second. I didn't capture a motion in a second for agenda.
Do we have a motion now to accept the agenda?
I'm sorry, I'm clerking tonight and I didn't catch her. Thank you.
Moved.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
my mistake.
And who seconded it?
Second?
Thanks, Greg.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you all.
Sorry about that.
Okay, you have copies of minutes in front of you. We were, as you saw from Cindy's correspondence, we received both November and, well, we received December's minutes, but we didn't have November until this evening. So if you need a moment to review the November meeting minutes, please do so. But I'm presuming that the December minutes were those the corrected ones, Cindy, that we're looking for, the tri-board meeting where we wanted some very specifics that.
Right, the November minutes, Mrs.
That's-
Dinette went
that's the
back and
November one?
added the detail to them, yes.
Okay. So before we move forward, Todd, would you take a look at the November minutes to see if it addressed the questions you had?
They're good.
They're good? Okay. Can I have a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved. Second.
Favor or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, those are accepted, unanimous. How about December? This was the tri-board meeting that we had. Any questions on these at all? Would someone like to make a motion for that for us, please?
Thank
I
you.
move that they be approved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, minutes passed. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the tax collector's report. This, as always, looks quite good. Are there any questions from any of our board members that we'd like to address to our tax collector as she is present for our meeting? Yes, sir.
I have a question on the second page. I'm kind of new at this, so I still ask dumb questions, so I beg your patience. The shaded bar under 2017, 2018, the percent collected, you don't have those numbers yet, so that's why it's blank.
I don't know why it looks like that.
Okay,
For next month.
thank you very much. That's my question.
We'll have to make it our copy.
Okay, that was a good eye. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move forward on that. Thank you very much for your help and input. We're gonna go now to our subcommittee. We also had an active, since the last month, I know our subcommittees have been quite active. So I'll begin with communications. Two of our members are present. Would one of you like to brief us on any updates with the communications team?
Thank you, Bruce. Yes, the article was printed in last week's East Hampton News. It's about a month late, and what happened there, I thought, as I told you folks last month, of being that Thursday, well, East Hampton News is pretty busy, a lot of articles, and they just didn't have the space until this week, past week, which is okay, because it's just the time of the start of budget season. So I hope everybody found the article informing. We are now working on our next article already. It's going to be about the endowment funds that this town is blessed to have. It's very interesting, at least on my part, learning about all these endowment funds and how much money they contribute to the budget each year. I don't think many people know that, so
Absolutely.
we're working on putting the finishing touches in the article so it can be in the East Hampton News. Well, I want you guys to read it first. Our final draft hasn't done yet, so it probably won't be until later in February before it goes out to the news, after you guys, folks, get a chance to review it. But the next article is about our endowment funds. And that's all we have at the moment, right, Bruce?
That's all we got.
Very good, thank you very much.
Enough, isn't it?
No real change on the increasing revenue aspect of it, but I'm gonna combine increasing revenues, the same committee works together, and so the other aspect is financial policies. I will now turn over to my colleague on that board, or subcommittee, to maybe give us a little briefing on that. And I'll fill in whatever you might.
No, you can start now. I think that what might be of more immediate interest at the moment is that we are in the process of working on and hope to have completed in time to make it useful for the upcoming budget cycle. Some kind words about budget policy. I think I mentioned the last time we were here. That a couple of things that I happen to think would be useful are a projection going out 5 years. I mean, 5 years is arbitrary. It could go 3, it could go 8. I mean, but a look into the future about where we think we're going to be in terms of operating expenditures, and similarly, we hope we can develop some forward-looking numbers with respect to capital needs. I'm missing a piece which we should have before us next meeting, I think.
And the capital needs section, just to add to that, we're waiting some data points from our financial advisor as to certain percentages that work really well with the rating agencies. So
Debt management.
right in that debt management category. So by having that data, we'll be able to better assess what those needs might, what capacity we can handle in terms of debt, not only now but going forward infinitely. And
We're not here.
well, for other boards. And then, but just to keep things in reason, and part of the nice thing about this allows us to kind of project out what those, as we'll turn shortly over to our financial needs roundtable, we'll be able to at least come up with some dollar numbers in our minds that we can really, what we can afford in that space. And then we can we're going to eventually develop a process to help select the best projects that we want to do for capital outlay going forward. So there's a lot of moving parts with this, but it's been an exciting subcommittee, and I think that we're going to make some great progress. So this year, our end result this year, I think, ought to be a real positive outcome. And Cindy, we haven't set our next meeting.
We're set for Friday, I believe.
That's our group Friday, okay. I know I'm meeting Friday, I didn't know if that was us. so-
8:30 before eggs and bacon.
And I'm meeting with Bill Lindsay on Thursday to review all that data, so I'll have it for you on Friday.
So the likelihood is we'll want to have some draft information for this board by the February meeting. Is that probably true?
Absolutely.
So we should have some more hard stuff for you guys to take a look at coming up. Good stuff happening. Okay, next. Tracy, would you like to brief us on any updates on the financial needs roundtable?
I haven't met, we're meeting February 4th, I think.
February 4th? Okay, good. So we're looking forward to that as well. Hopefully we'll have some of those tools that I
Right,
just
yeah.
articulated.
Very helpful.
Okay, that's it for chairman's report.
Boys.
The next item I'd like to go is under first selectman, and I invite our first selectman to speak and maybe highlight the 4 items that we asked for discussion.
Discourage you and disappoint you with all sorts of things. January 2nd, FEMA held a briefing over Colchester and briefed us on what we have to do, how to go forward with the storm damage. It's been approved. And our request for public assistance has been submitted along with the forms that go with it. We've got RFQs and RFP combinations for Neptune Avenue is ready for final review by the lawyer. And because of AIA requirements, we get it from the lawyer, we have to review it, and then it goes back to the lawyer for the actual changes. We're not allowed to change or adjust that. But that's American Institute of Architects. I didn't appreciate what it stood for up until today. The Hemlock Valley and Bonfoy, we're still putting information together for that. We need some more stuff from the Public Works, and then that's going back to the lawyers. We're hopefully going to get those out in the short term. Consumers Reports has been very eager to go ahead and move forward with working on Ackley Road for us. Talked to our lawyer about it. He said you really need to hold harmless if we're going to have them in there working on our road. We've got that prepared. I've got a copy of it. It's going to go to KERMA on our side, to Consumers Union's lawyers on their side, and then hopefully we'll be able to move forward and do some work on that road for us.
Wonderful.
There is traffic getting through, but it needs, if it's going to be protected and preserved, it needs protected. And they're willing to do that, take care of it for us. Great idea. Save us some money.
Very good.
Neptune Brook, where we lost the bridge on Neptune Avenue. There was quite a problem. The brook was no longer in its channel. It was all over the place. A lot of debris from the road that was down there, tar, metalwork, everything. That's all been cleaned up and removed. And the people down there that live down there are pretty happy about how it looks now. We had to get a construction easement and get that in place so that we could get in there and take care of that. Rest of the town, all roads that were impassable are now passable. Repairs are underway, those are ongoing. It's going to take quite a while to do it. Estimate is about $3.7 million. If we get 75% of that back, which is what we anticipate from FEMA, we still got a pretty big chunk to absorb out of that. So it's going to be pretty tough.
May I interrupt you one moment? I just want to share some information with the rest of the board. So just so you understand the scope of how the FEMA process works, that 25% that we're required to cover on that includes things like in-kind services, depreciation on vehicles. There's a lot of pieces that we're doing now that will be counted toward that 75%. And Cindy and I have been speaking about this, and the reality is we're tracking all of that, and
That's going to help offset.
it's going to help offset some of that portion that we have.
So that it won't be quite as bad as it sounds. As far as our trees are concerned, we've spent about $40,000 up to date now. We're working with Charlie Island. He's working in tandem with our crew. It gets a lot more work done for the same money. It was suggested that we contact Distinctive Service out of Windsor. And if you go online and take a look at their equipment, they've got this Sanabogan setup. And they've got one unit that grabs the tree, chops off a chunk, hands it off to another one, which feeds it into a chipper, which loads it into a 40-foot box. I contacted them, spoke with Jason Yerk, who owns the operation, said, how does that work out for us with roads alongside of wires? He said, it doesn't work. You absolutely have to use a bucket when you're around wires. It's much more surgical. Any risk of touching a wire or anything. He suggested that perhaps in some fashion he could help us piggyback on with what the state's doing, Eversource is doing. I've asked for some quotes from him. I haven't got those yet in terms of what it would actually cost. I have heard it's quite expensive. So we'll see how that one goes.
With the $40,000 that has been expended, do you have an idea how many trees that's
I
covered
couldn't
in?
give you a count on that. The way Beth is approaching it, rather than running here, there, and everywhere and wasting a lot of time and money on people, she's going to a road and saying, let's deal with this road. Let's deal with this road. And getting as much as she can done in that particular road. And in spite of the fact that there are no leaves, they can pretty well identify what needs to come down.
Okay, thank
So
you.
we're moving forward with that. Transfer station, we're going to be proposing this Wednesday at the Board of Selectmen meeting to raise our bulky waste fees from $100 to $120 a ton. I think that's overdue now, and 120 is more consistent with what others are charging right now. They're replacing the overhead door on the backside of the hopper starting January 17th. And when they do that, they're going to also put the hinges back on that had broken loose for the gates. And once we've got that, we're going to be able to let people with large loads get in back of the hopper again and unload that way. It's creating a real problem for everybody else who's coming in now to have the big loads and everything coming at once. So that's going to make it a smoother operation. The staff up there have just begged me to get that done. That is creating all sorts of problems for them. Once we have that in place, we're going to go ahead and revise the traffic program. We've been talking about that, what we're going to need in terms of signage, how we're going to do it, and we're going to almost reverse flow into it. It's going to give us control over who's in there, collect fees that we're supposed to. I've seen too many people just blow by the scales. And at this point, everybody's going to come in, be told where to go down the scale. Have you got a sticker? We're going to make sure that we're collecting the fees, and only people that belong in there are going to be in there. So that's going to improve it considerably. We've got handouts already going out, what's in, what's out. I got some stuff I'll pass out to you in a moment. You can see on the right-hand side what the what's in, what's out looks like. And it's an interesting thing because recycling, something like the top you peel off of a yogurt pot is not a recyclable item. And it's not because it's contaminated, it's aluminum, and you'd think that it would go into it. The problem is that it behaves like paper, and when they go to separate everything, it winds up in there with the paper, it completely contaminates the paper stream. So it's going to be a little bit of a difficult thing to educate people in terms of what you can do. But we're going to be doing that. There's going to be signage, handouts, and they're planning instructional seminars, the opportunity for people to come in and learn how to recycle, what does work, how to do it, how to set it up. So we're going to be setting that up at the transfer station. There are a series of articles I've promised. First one was published this last Thursday. The second one is going to be in the East Haddam News this coming week. First one was just a basic, how do we work today? The second one is what kind of problems are we looking at that we need to solve up there? How are we going to get control over making sure we collect the fees at only residents, and so on, that sort of thing. The third one is going to talk about recycling. Recycling is an absolute challenge at this point. China's chopped it off. If you look at Stanford, they were collecting $95,000 a year for recyclable material that they turned in. They're gonna be paying $700,000 this year for it. It's that kind of a reversal. I talked to Tim DeVivo up at Willimantic Waste. We're gonna be up there on Wednesday afternoon, Beth and I, to meet with him. Our contract ends the middle of the summer. We're gonna have a new contract at that point. He has suggested that instead of getting $5 a ton for what we're submitting for recyclables, we'll probably be paying 40. And that's in keeping with what happened to Stanford, given the volumes involved. But things are gonna change for a lot. He's got a little bit of encouragement. He says what we're doing is we're starting to develop a recycling capacity here in the United States. People are looking at it saying this is a good business to get into, and hopefully things are gonna change more to our benefit at that point. But things are changing. We really need to look at it. My next article is going to be recycling. What is it all about? What are the challenges we're faced with?
Have you had a chance to analyze the financial impact of 5+ to -40 yet? Do you know anything about that yet, Cindy?
I've looked at the numbers myself. We do about 1,000 tons a year right now, so we're getting $5,000. 1,000 tons will cost us $40,000 next year. We should, and this second article here is talking about the state. The state of Connecticut DEEP is pushing for us to get to the point where we're going to do 50, perhaps as much as 60% recycling by 2024. If we go up to 50%, and it's really hard to work with the numbers, but instead of paying $70 a ton, arguably we'll be paying 40 for that next 1,000. That $30,000 would work for us. Now, what the actual ceiling for the regular trash, the tipping fees, is going to be, I don't know.
Given the bulky waste increase that you mentioned in the beginning of your briefing, is that close enough to offset this increase in cost? So I think I heard you say $100 to $120.
It's going to help.
But I mean,
I don't know how much that's going to help. What may make a big difference is that we have an agreement with the haulers that if and when we go to the bag system, which is where we're going to go with the fourth article, and talk about that in a second, they've agreed to stop delivering what they're hauling to us and get rid of it themselves. So that's going to be a great benefit to us. It will reduce significantly how much we're hauling, what we're doing. A lot of moving parts. Just how they're all going to fit together. A lot of it's speculation at this point.
Excuse me. How much do we pay Willimantic for the household garbage?
Household garbage right now, what's going into the hopper.
Right.
And remember, 1,000 tons of that is recyclable material. You can hear the soda bottles and the glass tinkling and see the tin cans going in. But right now we're paying $70 a ton for that, dispose of it, plus about $105 a trip for hauling.
Okay.
Quite a bit. We have reached out. I spoke with Chris Nelson at DEEP. He's a supervising environmental analyst. We had Kristen Brown, who works for them with the bag system, the pay-to-throw sort of system. And she's going to be in contact with us, and we're going to try to move into that. That's something, I'm not just sure how we get into it, but that has to be the next step. And we're going to be looking at that. I've got bags, sample bags. Salem's doing it. Stonington is doing it. And we have a gentleman from Stonington who runs that show who's more than willing to work with us to get into it. So that's going to be the final phase of it. And the real question is whether we do it as a fee, which our lawyers kind of said we can do it, or if we go to a town meeting and get approval by the town to do it. It's really a question of process now, is how do we do it? But that's the final step. And moving on, East Haddam Village. Revitalization Committee preparing an RFQ. for review. It's just about finished right now. We've been through it. It has to go back to the lawyers again to be released. The way they want to proceed with it is an RFQ initially, and we'll be reviewing a subset or reviewing all the applications for qualifications, making sure you have the capacity to do it. Financially, you're able to do it. You've done something like this before, that you're competent. Once they see that, and they're going to do a small review in terms of how do you envision the use of that property, but not a full-blown RFP at that point. They're going to come up with a short list of qualified applicants and then go back for an RFP from them saying, okay, show us exactly what you'd like to do. Once they see that, they're going to select amongst it, bring it back, and go to town meeting with it and see if the town wants to do that with the property. Schedule that we're looking at, the RFQ, we'd like to be releasing it by February 1st. We would like responses April 18th. We'd like to do interviews by mid-May. That gives us a chance to look them over and do some analysis. We want to shortlist it by the end of May and ask all the shortlists for RFPs, actual proposals for the property. And the schedule right now calls for by the end of August to have those responses back, the RFPs, and make a selection, and hopefully by October actually be at a town meeting. That's kind of the game plan. There is some discussion going on the part of the East Haddam Village Revitalization Committee. They're a little bit concerned we did not get selected for the brownfield, and they're trying to look at the impact, and we're supposed to be meeting later this week to talk about that. Just how do we move forward? Tim Majak is planning on being there to offer his advice on just how to move forward. So I think we're going to be in pretty good shape at that point. But that meeting is coming up, as I say, later this week. On one other note, the East Haddam Free Public Library, probate court refused to make a decision on it for us. And we took it to Superior Court through our lawyer. We expect that we're going to have a stipulated judgment and that it probably will be in our favor within the next month. At that juncture, we're going to have to take that to a town meeting, because it's actually, what it does is it gives the Reading Room Association permission to offer us the building. And once they've offered us the building, then we have to go to town meeting. It's a gift, and we have to accept it as a town. So that's the process we'll be going through, but hopefully that's starting to wrap up. That's been going on, I think, for 5 years now, that process. And a lot of confusion, a lot of reluctance going forward that's been involved with that, but hopefully we're going to be in a position, one way or the other, to resolve it.
Okay, good. If you would, I'm going to invite my team to ask some questions. Tracy, do you have any questions on any of the topics that
I just had one on the Bonfoy Road. Is there some way to, I don't know, put more absorbent material on the hillside, because the water's just coming down and it's freezing? There was an accident there.
Now it's going to be all over the road.
Well, the water's coming down. I don't know if there's, more hay or something to divert it, or something at the end that would divert it so it doesn't come down down that where it's already, washed out, and then it's piling up, and there was an
I'll
accident.
talk to Beth about that. I know that
And it was a
there's
state road, so I don't know if that gets in our way
one
or not.
drain up above it, a foundation drain, which actually is coming down into the gutter alongside the road.
That,
And it's creating, we have that on Daniel Peck, the eastern end of Daniel
Okay.
Peck, and down there both.
yeah,
And that may be part of what's happening. Those were permitted. I may have been on planning and zoning when we did it,
oh, right, yeah.
but it would not be done today. It would
I mean,
not
I don't know what it is, but it's just,
I'll ask her to look into
yeah,
that.
anything else?
that's it.
Harvey?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. With respect to trees, it was suggested a while back that we try to see if the current contractor we're involved with or some other would be open to sort of a package deal that we'll take all you got for the next 6 months or however you want to structure it.
That's really up to Charlie Islin and how he wants to run his company. He's the one we have to deal with.
Has anybody approached him to try to ask, negotiate?
To get 100% of his effort for whatever.
Yeah, or 75% for, are you, some kind of a deal where we are assured of his services at a price that we can afford.
Well, we have that already. I'm not sure exactly what the terms are in terms of how much of his services,
Okay.
but he's working for us on a regular basis, a couple of days a week, that sort of thing.
And we are looking for other other options.
Yeah. The other options can be expensive. The one I spoke of, Distinctive, the figure that I've heard is $8,000 a day.
Mm-hmm.
It adds up fast at that
But
rate.
of course, if they do 4 times as many trees as Island,
It's,
it may be worth it.
and the big dilemma is they can't use that device near the wires.
But again, you could plan the work out with respect. You could imagine planning the work out so that they could come and work for a period of time where there's wires here, there's no wires in between, there's no wires over there, no wires over there.
But keep in mind that Islin is not doing 100% of the work.
I understand that.
He's reducing it down to the point where our guys can clean it up.
And he
That
takes care of
represents it.
wires.
Yeah, he goes through the wires, gets it
Yeah.
down to where we can deal with it, and our guys do it. It saves us a fortune doing that.
Okay.
Unfortunately, our guys are absolutely straight out right now, and breaking them loose to work with Charlie is one of the issues.
Okay.
And we have just had one guy come back, who was out for surgery. The guy's back. We have a second going out for surgery, and it's going to be fairly long-term. And we are in the process of getting a add-in, looking for temporary help to replace him for that duration. Our guys are stressed right now. They're stressed.
I
as soon
understand,
as they
and
can
as soon as it snows, it's gonna be worse.
Yeah. And, you know, if we start just bringing someone in to do the whole job, it's gonna get real pricey real fast.
Okay.
Beth is trying to balance what's going on as best she
I
can.
understand. The other is I understood you, I think I understood you to say that Beth was kind of looking at this road by road by road. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I assume she has some approach to, what do you want to call it, triage roads. So we're hitting the most critical ones first. Okay.
And, you know, if something becomes identified as a danger, it has to be removed.
Yes. Yeah.
As soon as we are aware of the fact there's a problem, we have to remove it.
Right. Right.
And so but beyond that, the greatest economy is to just go and say, okay, I'm gonna take care of this stretch. Because you can boom, 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 one after the other, and get more done in a day.
Okay. You started a series of articles in the East Haddam News to sort of say, historically, where have we been with the transfer station? If I understood you correctly, what are our current problems? Then another article about the need for recycling.
Well,
Or the-
recycling and what the challenges are, what's
Right.
going on within it.
What could we do by way of recycling?
Yeah.
And then if I understood correctly, a fourth article which would be along the lines of, what are we gonna do?
Yeah.
Okay.
What does the future look like
Right.
for you know, we've changed as a people. When I was a kid, a 50-gallon drum, and we burnt the stuff in the backyard, and every 6 months, we took it to the dump and got rid of it. We can do that in a week now. on most families with the amount of trash we're generating. We generate so much more than we ever did before. And there are all sorts of concepts that may come into play. In Europe, they're doing an awful lot of prepaying for the disposal. We do a little bit of that. If you go up there now with your electronics, computers, whatever, they're free because you've prepaid when you bought the computer for its disposal.
Right, it's a life,
So we've got a whole system
a
that
life
does that.
cycle concept.
And in Europe, that's become a major concept where they're doing it. I think that's one of the things we need to do is, okay, let's look at it and build in the cost of getting rid of it up front. You buy something, you're paying for its disposal. Mattresses, I believe, we're doing the same thing. But we haven't really moved forward with that as much as we should in this country. There's discussion about whether or not we're going to go forward with that. Can we do that with cardboard? Can we do that with all manner of things? So, you know, there's a lot being considered. I wouldn't even dare predict exactly where we're going to end up. I know we've got to make some changes, some significant changes in what we do. And that's not just we as a town, but we as a nation.
Yeah, well, I would suggest that the fourth of the articles is sort of the most important.
I think you're probably right.
That people in town are gonna be saying, okay, I know the history, I know this, what are we gonna do?
And that's,
And it may be the most challenging, but
and you know, I'm trying to do these one a week. I can tell you, I'm gonna be stressed trying to get this third article together by Friday so that I can give it to Dave and get it into the East Haddam News.
no.
But I'm gonna make that effort.
And my final question, or concern, I guess, is that with any luck, if I understand it correctly, you anticipate that the Superior Court will issue a ruling in the next month or so, and we go to town meeting and accept the Moody's Free Library. The problem that I foresee then is, okay, that's great, what next? And that's going to be an important issue to face because, I mean, I spend most of my day either reading or writing now. And I don't get but my pleasure reading from our libraries. They don't have the texts I need to do my research in, but the libraries are an important cultural asset to the town, but in my humble opinion, they are, as physical plants, woefully inadequate. And we're gonna have to, not today or tomorrow, but hopefully within my lifetime, face the question of, okay, what are we going to do to have a 21st century library system in East Haddam that doesn't break the bank?
That's being considered. There's a subcommittee
Yes, I
at the
understand.
libraries.
I'm just making a pitch. I'm just making a sales pitch. And we have it with the leather upholstery and the air conditioning.
It's
You
being
understand.
considered by a lot of people in a lot of different ways. Where do we go? What do we do?
Yes.
How do we
Thank
use the
you.
buildings? Do we replace them?
Yes.
That's a lot of thought being put into that already.
And I'm just making a pitch.
I've had the pitch made to me 2 or 3 times now.
Well, I'll be around next month. Thank you, Emmett.
There you go.
Appreciate it.
One other item, just so that we touch it all. I don't know what I did with it here. Our building inspector, things have changed in terms of what we're doing. And we really do need someone there during the day. We're getting a lot of complaints about that. Right now, the inspections are being done early, prior to 7 o'clock, and late after 5, thereabouts. Once again, we're becoming a lot more active, a lot more building going on in town. not so much houses as rebuilding and refurbishments. And the time has come, and I've talked to Vinnie about it, where we're probably gonna have to put on someone, probably pretty close to full-time. I'm looking at 32 to 35 hours a week. That means benefits, a little bit more pay, and we're still gonna be putting a advertisement out for that. I'll keep you posted in terms of what's happening, but that is moving forward. Time has come. And, you know, Vinnie was always kind of a fill-in, a stopgap. Things were real slow. We really didn't want to put somebody back on full-time like we had had before, but that's changing again. Just so you're on notice about that.
Okay.
No questions.
Any questions? Craig?
The only one I had, Harvey hit last, which was basically on the gift, potential gift, which can be a very expensive gift. I know it was a point of contention at last budget season, so hopefully we've got a lot more work and research done as to the capital that may be required, whether it's ADA compliance or anything else that may come up when you transfer property, so as long as we're prepared.
I think a lot of people, myself included, have spent many hours thinking about that, what the alternatives are, what's best for the town, and how are we best served. And like Harvey, I read a lot. My library is probably a couple of thousand books. I can't throw a book away for some reason. And I've read most of them. But I don't go to the library to get books. You know, I'm far too focused for that in terms of what I want. But they serve an incredibly important role. And it ranges from the very simple, the middle school has a bus that comes down, kids can study, wait for their parents to come home from work at the East Haddam Free Library. It's an important function. You see that place mobbed with cars from time to time. They're bringing young children for special programs. There's a lot going on at the libraries, and it's important. A great many people go there for lack of a computer, and they make use of the computers there. It's different from what it was when I was a kid, but it's still there. So it's important.
Anything else, Craig?
That's all.
Todd?
Yes, I have a few comments and questions. While we're talking about libraries, if you go to our neighboring towns like Colchester or Haddam, the library is the center of town. It's a community center, basically, because it's more than just books. It's activities go on there, various activities in town. There's also for training sessions, and kids come to learn about stuff and make crafts. So it's really and movies are shown on digital screens, of course. But it's a real vibrant part of town. It'd be a real plus to our town if we had a good library system. Whether it's two buildings or one, that's a good discussion. But I'm full support of libraries in this town. Getting down to nuts and bolts here, the FEMA 75%. You can take that to the bank. They're going to give us 75%.
And it's of covered items. Bookkeeping is very important, timing is important. We've done this repeatedly with hurricanes, we know how to do it. We know what we have to do in terms of record keeping and justification.
Okay. Record keeping, just like the government.
Very important. And you know, Craig Mansfield was on top of that from day one, contacting Beth, saying, here's what you got to do. And so the records have been kept right from September 25th. And hopefully they've all been kept correctly.
When we also get to assign value to volunteer time, equipment use time, my time, Emmett's time, we have administrative assignments. So we will make sure we track as much as possible for our match. And FEMA has automated the process. We did file for our application. They've confirmed receipt. And then they begin with a phone call and a visit. So after the visit, we'll be able to, before budget season, we hope, or during budget season, quantify what's acceptable to FEMA and what we are looking to match.
So for instance, the time that's being expended by Consumer Union would be considered in that aspect of.
Try to include that, but we'll have a better idea of what they deem as acceptable compared to our estimates, and they'll give us an approved project, if you will. And that, at that point, we would come to the Board of Finance for a grant authorization approval, because we won't embark on any grant funds until we have that approval and we know the scope of it. We thought about putting it on today's agenda, but it would have been a blank amount until we've totally evaluated that. But we're moving forward with FEMA. It was quite the informative meeting.
Yeah, it's good. With the hurricanes, I mean, everybody who showed up at the firehouse was checked in, their hours recorded, because that all became a part of it. And it wasn't just a question of where we spent money or we expended material. It was also the time that every volunteer contributed. So that all counts.
Good. Todd, more questions?
Yes, getting on to trees. No, I appreciate all of the previous comments and questions about the trees. I had the same. Thank you very much for bringing them up. But now that you've been in the job for a while, do you have any idea of when you'll be done? Is it gonna take 2 or 3 years? What I'm concerned about is speed, because I have trees on my property which have been attacked, and I've taken down quite a few of them already. And as I take them down, I see more to come down, so it's kind of scary, actually. But there, at some point, those trees will become a danger. Like if you got an ash that's
Ash is a
75 feet up and the branches start falling down, and they fall down big pieces. So I'm concerned about getting the job done. Yes, this company that Charlie Island is running sounds good, but my gut feel tells me we're gonna need more help later on.
I mean, if you go to Canterbury, I think it was Canterbury, they don't seem to need their town aid money that comes in every year. They've dedicated half of that to taking trees down. It's really a question of finding the money to do it. We don't have that opportunity. We need the town aid money. Beth needs it for work that she's gonna be doing. We're gonna have to see what we can do and how fast we can do it, and come to you for the monies to make it happen.
Okay, I have a few more questions. Getting to the bulky waste, you've done this already? You raised the fees to $120? You're going
This will be
to?
this Wednesday, we'll be considering it. And
Yeah.
I expect it to pass. I can't imagine that it wouldn't.
But what I'm concerned about, raising the fees, fine, if that makes sense to the Board of Selectmen. But I wanna make sure nobody misses the gate, misses the scale, because
That's,
I go in and pay my $100 a ton, I see the other guy driving by me, it's not too exciting.
I didn't want to bring the picture, but I could have. You know how you drive in, the hopper's there, and then you drive out down into the road? And go just the opposite way. You're gonna come up in, everybody who comes into that place is gonna land in front of the hopper. When the attendants, some of the staff will say, you need to go down to the scale to be weighed. That way, somebody knows you're going down there, you're not gonna wind up sitting down there with nobody catching you, and you're not gonna sneak on by. And I can't tell you how often, when I've been there, I've looked down and that guy just blew by the scale. And he had something he should have been paying for. What's going on here? And this way, everybody comes in. Everybody can be checked for a sticker. You got a sticker? Oh, you don't? Let's see your identification. You belong here. Fine, we'll give you a sticker. There's gonna be an issue. There are some individuals who don't want a sticker on their car. Police, medical, special, whatever. And they don't really want people to know where they live. You've got policemen who work in other towns. They don't want other people knowing they're from East Haddam, looking at their vehicle. And I've got a deal for them. I'm gonna tell them, you come on down to my office, explain why, and I'll get a piece of masonite, and we'll put a sticker on it for you, and you can put it in the window when you go in. But I'm not gonna have the guys up at the transfer station do that. Let them come down and talk to me and explain why. I'll be very sympathetic.
I accept, got it.
And so the question I'm trying to ask is, when you increase the fees, is that gonna be the same time you're gonna improve the
It's all gonna come
traffic
in
system,
together.
so?
Well, the
people-
fees, we pass them Wednesday. That's it, they're done. We start charging at that rate. And as quickly as we can, they're gonna reverse the traffic flow.
Do you have any idea when that quickly is gonna be?
They're eager. You know, it's curious. It was Randy Dill came up with it, showed me the idea layout. And I looked at it and thought about it and changed it and went back again and took it down to the transfer station. And Don looked at me and said, we've been pushing for this for years. They're eager. They're more than willing, they're ready to do that. So as quickly as we can do it, I'm not gonna tell you a day or a week or, I don't want a month, that's for sure. Quick as we can do it.
I appreciate that, thank
It
you.
involves painting out the lines where people park. Involves putting in new lines. I mean, there's a certain amount of effort that's gonna go into it.
Okay, good, thank you.
All set, Doug?
I'm all set.
Thank you, Emmett. Okay, let's move forward to the next order of business, which are Finance Director's Report. Cindy?
You all received your audit. Our audit partner, Leslie Zoll, will be here next month to review with you. And as we've done in prior years, if you have any questions, if you can get them to us in advance, that would be great, so we can do our best to answer your questions. The audit did have a management letter this year. Two issues, one being the Park and Recreation credit card fees. This was an issue that through the transition of staffing, we identified and brought to the auditors. As you indicated in your memo, there was several outstanding credit card receivables. Some were just simply entered into the system and their registration of the program never came to fruition. And there were other individuals with outstanding balances. I have to really give credit to Rec Director Lisa Conroy. She's really worked it through, followed through, and cleaned this up. There are still some outstanding balances, but we now have a process by which you cannot register for any recreation program without paying or paying a past due bill. So you can't, if you have a past due bill, you can't even register for a program. So this should alleviate it in the future. We met with the auditors, we reviewed the process, and they went through how we handle things in the rec office. I will codify it with a written procedure that we can include for handling, but so far it's been working very, very well. We're very happy with that.
Good job.
And then the student activity funds. This is, each school has funds they collect for athletics and field trips and what have you. And many times they're faced with having to cut a check immediately versus go through our payment processing system. And we're just going to try to work to provide the ability for them to come through the operating budget through central office and to just have things flow in a manner that they're supposed to, not concerned of any inappropriate activity, but more process. So the two of them, I hate management letters, but they're pretty light compared to ones we've had a decade ago. So we will continue to move forward in that fashion. Strongly encourage you to read the audit if you have a chance. We had a very good year. And on that note, if you don't mind, Bill, I know there was some consternation with people with regard to the article in the East Haddam News discussing our year-end results. And really, they didn't give a background as to what generated those results. A simple explanation is that
So before you go, I just want to make sure everybody understands the results was that big article of $500,000 surplus on the front page.
Yes. So to boil it down on a $30 million budget, you know, we expended 99% and our revenues were 101%. The tax collector collected $263,000 more than we budgeted. And our revenues were good, to the good, $251,000. So Denise was a big part of that. We also received.
May I put a pause on what you're
Yes.
saying? If you want to follow some of the numbers, just look on page 62 of the audit.
RSI 1 and 2, yes. Some of our endowment funds did much better, and we received the STEEP funds for the Ag Center. In addition, this board was very conservative in budgeting state estimates. You did not make an assumption that you would receive everything, which some towns fell prey to. So on the revenue side, we truly benefited by your conservatism and Denise collecting well over budget. On the expense side, we were 230 some odd thousand under budget. 75,000 of that was that the Board of Finance didn't spend their contingency. So that you only spent 15,000. And then if you just walk through the budgets in different areas, the building department was 38,000 under budget because we had a part-time building official. And other areas were under budget for things we didn't replace or didn't need spending. So at the end of the day, and I, at the Communications Committee meeting with Bruce and Todd, we talked about it. This is a really good report card for the Board of Finance's budgeting. I mean, Denise obviously helped and other components helped, but it's a nice place to be. It just would have been more helpful if they told the story. I think there's a great story to tell about Denise's efforts. And that would have probably helped some of the questions.
Yes, sir.
Chairman. It's a good point. We talked about this at the Communications Subcommittee. It'd be, I got a few phone calls, I have to admit, and they were saying, you guys raised the taxes too much last year, you got the surplus. That isn't the whole story, though. So it'd be real nice if the newspaper can write the story with all the details that Cindy just explained, or should we, as a Board of Finance, write a press release and explain it all so the paper can write an article from it? Or we can just simply write an article and put it in the paper. I think it's important that people understand what we're doing and why, and the result of what we're doing. Because right now they don't. They just saw the 504,000. That's a big number. It really is. It's not us. It's actually a mark of us doing our job, not being overly aggressive in raising taxes. So when they go into the booth on referendum day, they don't have the 504,000 on their eyeballs because they're going to do it again. There's a reason for this, and a little bit of it is hard work. Well, actually, a lot of it's hard work, but a little bit is luck too, because things happen to line up properly. I think I personally believe that people need to understand this.
Do you think that East Haddam News would be amenable to a follow-up article that they would do, or do we need to write it ourselves?
Probably wouldn't hurt for us to reach out and ask them to contact you or Emmett or myself or all three of us or a combination, but something to get that story out as to why the town was so successful. It wasn't over taxation.
We'll follow up on that on Friday. Okay.
Yes.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes, sir.
In less than 5 minutes, an article was expressed verbally. Why would it not be
We could just write it. Yeah.
more efficient to commit that
In either case,
to
we'll definitely.
paper and then say, here, rather than make them scramble for it?
Okay. I mean, in either case, we'll follow up. I would agree.
Because I do think come budget season, and we did talk about this, you want people to understand that it was a good story, not a bad story.
Yeah.
But, and then
And a lot of it is one time. I mean, I think some of the things that happened with the tax collector happened to be, you did some sales and brought in some extra revenue. Things of that nature happen, right? Those aren't happening every year. They happen.
Denise does relatively well, but yeah,
But I'm saying you had a big,
it was a bigger year.
you had a bigger year. We didn't, another example, Board of Finance. We had a lot of money budgeted for contingency, which we used
15,000.
very little, right? So there were places where there was monies allocated for expenditure. Department of Economic Development didn't hire the person that they were allocated to do planning and so on. There were people that were designated to be hired, and it just didn't happen this year. So that money was saved. It really was.
It turned out rather nicely.
And until we get to the next item, you'll see that it was just a matter of years, but we have a good use for that too.
I did compare last December 17th to December 18th. I am lower this December than the previous because everybody was rushing to pay their taxes early.
And that's another point too, remember?
So it's about an $80,000 difference just with that.
The tax law changes.
Right, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about
Trying
that.
to keep the system.
Right.
Put that as a note too. I mean, all of these added up, all in, frankly, in a positive, and, you know, we had to be more conservative where we were coming from. We didn't even know what the state was doing. That steep money was a surprise. We never expected that returned.
Right, so it was a very successful year. The December year-to-date budget report, there's no surprises in there, nothing that I'm concerned with, nothing that's tracking out of the ordinary. If there's any specific questions people would like, I'd be happy to answer them. But I have no red flags or immediate areas of concern. I can identify you at the bottom of page 2 of 8. The storm damage is now at 122,468. We're tracking it on a separate line. And again, that's real dollars. That does not reflect any time or effort or use of equipment. That's sheer dollars. And the capital in here as well. A couple other budget items to note as we move forward till next year. We locked in diesel at $2.09 a gallon next year. It's down 10 cents from this year's budget.
209.
2099. And unleaded before a certain tax, we're at $1.84, just over $2 a gallon for unleaded for the next fiscal year. So you, as you start to see your budgets, will see some of the benefits of those. So that those are some really good numbers for us to receive. And the Board of Ed, we locked their diesel at, or their oil at 208, I think, something like that. So we were very pleased with those numbers. I remember back when we were happy to lock at 321, so we'll take it.
Do we have a propane account too for this one?
There's a propane account for this building that I think is a 3-year contract when we opened the building with Osterman.
It's not a yearly thing, it's a,
No, it was the committee bid it out, and it's a 3-year contract. Budget calendar update, there's nothing really to offer. I don't have an updated calendar. Oh,
Chairman, I had a few comments about the year-to-date. Just quickly, page 1, legal services is really nice to see. It's down 17,000 versus 42,000 last year. So hopefully keep that up. The transfer station on top of page 2, as we discussed last month, it's we had a lower original budget, and we're running year-to-date actual more than last year, so there might be a squeeze coming on later in the year.
Yep.
I just want to keep people's eyes on that. And then on page, top of page 4 of 8, the building department permit fees are a whopping 116,000 year-to-date, as opposed to 60,000 last year. It's nearly double the fees. That's quite a bit of remodeling, holy mackerel. So that definitely helped contribute to the bottom line. Also, I got a question, middle of page 4, the rents for cell towers. I guess I missed that before. I don't know how I did that, but I missed it. This is under revenue, so somebody's paying us rent for, I don't understand. What?
there's cell towers in town that we receive rent receipts for, yes.
Oh, like the one at the transfer station, you mean?
I couldn't tell you exactly where they're located, but we do receive rental receipts for transfer, for towers.
Okay. Thank you, and I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Are there any other questions for Cindy? Do you have any?
None.
Bruce? Tracy? Thank you very much. We'll move on now to liaison reports. Do any of you have any reports from your coordinating boards?
The only update I have, and I don't have a lot of details on it, is but there's a vice principal hired for the high school. That's a position that's been vacant for a long time.
Anything else?
That's all.
Todd?
Yes, I met with the Board of Fire Commissioners recently. I'm planning to meet with them again, and they are now back in charge of formulating the budget for the fire department. And that's it.
Thank you, Todd. Anything else? All right, good. New business. So the first one's sort of a simple one. Cindy, would you highlight the
Yeah.
transfer for the Board of Education Reserve, please? We have a
And I-
letter here demonstrating that.
2012, maybe, Tracy, what do you think?
I think it was around that time, yeah.
We established a way that at the end of each school year, the Board of Education, whatever funds were remaining following the audit would be then transferred to their reserves, which has come in rather handy because we've been able to do oil tank removals, asbestos removals, soon to be a high school roof if everything goes well this evening. And we have a couple other projects on tap for that. So this was a mechanism that the Board of Finance put in to take money that was appropriated for the Board of Education but not expended in the operating budget and use it for future capital Board of Ed endeavors. So the amount remaining this year total was $21,725.31. It does require a town meeting.
And so what I would like is to ask someone to make a motion to transfer these monies, and then we'll get to discuss it further.
I move to approve a transfer in the amount of $21,725.31 from the general fund account 105-49010-58928 to the Board of Education Capital Reserve Fund account number 3320-1506-25790, and to request that the Board of Selectmen schedule a town meeting for approval.
May I have a second?
I can second that.
Discussion. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimous. Okay, the next item on the agenda, I think, needs a little bit more explanation. So before we move forward with the explanation, I'll start with a little bit of it, and then I'm going to turn it over to both Cindy and perhaps Ron to maybe give me some highlights and some details. I met with the chairman of the Board of Education and with the superintendent and was informed that one of the projects that they've been budgeting for, the roof, the high school roof, has gotten to that point where it really needs to be replaced. And they just wanted to make me aware of that. And in my view, knowing that something is at that level and needs to be done, rather than putting more money into it just to kind of keep it going, I asked them to figure out a way to perhaps expedite it so that they can get it done more sooner than later. So with that, I'm going to ask first, maybe, Ron, you might want to give us a little highlight, if you would please, on the status of this roof. Are you aware of the actual, how good or bad it might be and how far along it is?
Losing my voice, so I'm sorry. It has small leaks that were popping up. Addressing with a local roofer. It got to the point where they had to strip down a good section of the roof, and they discovered that it was further along than it's denigrated to the point now where it needs to be addressed before it becomes a serious problem. There's a lot of water, where it's been penetrating different areas of the roof.
And in my view, the water damage can ultimately lead to so many other expenses that I thought anything we could do to expedite this process would save the town money ultimately. Cindy, would you mind highlighting some of the mechanism that we were discussing in terms of financing this project so everybody understands what they're voting on?
So to just take the sheet that you have right here and just start from the top, Ron has hit on the first couple of sentences. There are some funds in the Board of Ed capital reserves that have been planned for the project. When we appropriate for a project, the state requires that we appropriate the entire amount. And then we submit for reimbursement. The project will require approval by Board of Finance and a call to the town meeting by Board of Selectmen, then ultimately town meeting. And in order to accomplish the roof this summer, we have to complete this by the end of January and submit to the state the process in order to get it into the queue for summer construction. So the first set of numbers, the estimation from Jakunski Holmes Architects indicated a total construction cost of $1,347,720 and some non-reimbursable of $37,697 for a total of $1,310,023. And then on the right, I've just shown you projected state reimbursement rates and the total project cost to the town based on Mr. Jakunski's estimates. The state reimbursement to East Haddam last year was 50.71%. They have not sent that for 2019. So in light of that, come down town appropriation and funding sources, we're recommending an appropriation of $1.4 million, an assumption of $50,000 in non-reimbursable construction, and then $1.35 million in state reimbursement. So based at that at 50.71, the projected cost to the town would be $715,000. And to the right, the Board of Education Reserves has available $556,170, provided the money you just moved in your last motion goes in. And there's money in the Capital Project Reserves Fund that we had hoped to use for a transfer station vehicle, and we all know the status of that. So that's how we would fund the town $715,415. And just to give you info below to show you what's in these funds, the ending cash balance in Board of Ed at June 30 was $629, and then there's the budgeted transfer in, and then the transfer of last year's remaining funds. So that's a subtotal of available cash of roughly $750,000. And then there is the high school pending capital project of $120,000 for the boilers, which is in process. And then my alignment went a little weird, but the elementary school oil tank removal and replacement, the final cost came in at $75,300, and we were projecting at one point up to $200,000. So the total encumbrances against the reserve fund are $195,300, leaving $556,170 for the roof. Then if you come over to the capital projects fund, the June 30 ending balance was $193,457, and that remaining required amount of $159,245, and that would then leave a fund balance of $34,212. And just back to the transfer station on that fund, we thought we would buy that truck and then on our return on investments put the money back. So this is one way to not touch fund balance. We have a healthy fund balance, but in light of trees and everything else, to fund this out of money that's already in place and it largely has been appropriated or planned for the high school roof. So this would be a budget revision, and it would not impact general fund or additional taxation. We have the funds within. The motion, and obviously there's a lot of questions, the motion is multi-phase to account for each one, because we have to provide this motion to the state to show them the appropriation and to show where our fund sources are. And then it reflects that the money would be taken from the general fund with the intent that it would be paid back for the reimbursement of the grants.
So I want to remind board members that the motion means that each one of those three attributes must be approved for this
We
motion.
need to, 3 motions then? Or
One motion with all three
Right,
included. So before we go that route, are there any specific questions? Well, do we want to do the motion first? Did anybody have any questions now that we might need answered? Bruce?
No, it's well explained.
Yes, Todd.
I have a couple of questions. One is for this roof for $1.4 million, what's the predicted or guaranteed lifetime of the roof? This is a 40-year roof or a 30-year roof, is my question. Because that would make a big difference in life cycle cost.
Aren't you required after 20 years though?
No, that's oil tanks. Oil tanks are 20 or they're 30.
Okay.
We cannot seek reimbursement from the state for a roof for another 20. The state gives a life cycle of 20
Okay.
years for school construction eligibility.
Right, that's okay.
Okay, Don, anything else?
Yeah, one more thing is, I noticed in your breakdown on the conceptual budget cost estimate, I lost it. You have the downspouts and gutters what I noticed is, it appears to me that the drain pipes downstream of the gutters are plugged. That's why the water is overtopping. So the infiltration is clear and
We checked during the last rainstorm and everything was running.
well, that's good. That saves a lot of money. Okay, very good. Those are my two questions. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Okay, would someone like to make the oh, you have another question, please.
Following up on Todd's question, the school, and I'll bet Todd could tell me down to the day, the school was put in service in,
The roof is 26 years old.
okay, that was, you got me there without the math. Thank you. Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Would someone like to make this motion, please?
Do I have to read all the account numbers, or can I just do it
No.
without? Okay.
You can see.
I'll fill them all in if that's.
Excellent. Okay. I move to appropriate an amount not to exceed $1,400,000 for the purpose of replacing the Nathan Hale Ray High School roof. Funding for the roof as follows. Number one, $556,170 transferred from the Board of Education Capital Reserves Fund to the Capital Projects Fund. Number two, $159,245 transferred from the Capital Projects Reserve Fund to the Capital Projects Fund. Number three, a special appropriation from the General Fund undesignated fund balance in the amount of $684,585, such funds to be reimbursed to the General Fund by anticipated state grant funds. And to request that the Board of Selectmen schedule a town meeting for approval.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. I do want to point out as we move forward, and this, I don't want to can't take personal credit, but I want to take credit for those that were involved, our finance director and those that preceded me, and even those on the Board of Education. This problem is a big problem that is being rectified quite easily because of good budgeting. Putting the money aside for the capital, having it here when we need it is, and I want to just give credit to those that were involved in the time in making it happen. It's no surprise. Okay, next item is the Ford Disaster Relief Vehicle Grant Application Authorization Request. So, Cindy, can you give me some information on that, please?
And I can, and I know that Craig Mansfield spoke with Todd. Would you like to fill them in, or no?
Oh, go right ahead.
Okay, so Craig was made aware of an opportunity. They've been trying to find some kind of dedicated emergency management vehicle, and Ford has a disaster relief vehicle grant. There is no matching funds, and they're looking, the only cost that we would be impacted for is fuel and maintenance as it ages. So the emergency management is asking for approval to seek these grants funds.
That's wonderful.
If I read this correctly, only 3 grants of 70,000 will be awarded. Is that 3 grants nationwide? 3 grants in East Haddam?
Nationwide.
I think it's nationwide,
That's probably
Harvey. It would be
nationwide.
terrific if it was here. Middlesex County could certainly use it in September.
Okay. Any other questions?
But yeah, I guess I do. Not to be nasty about this, but has anybody from emergency management written down why they really need this?
I can tell you.
I need a Ferrari, but I mean, it wouldn't be too much, given that they want a grant.
It's in the
To
last
actually-
sentence, actually.
Who would serve
This
as me?
vehicle would serve as a,
Yeah. And what's gone wrong not having one? And tell me why you really need this, dude.
They have been trying to get an emergency vehicle for emergency management by repurposing another vehicle since my beginning of time. And it's never really made it anywhere. So I think there's an attempt, and it's probably a long shot, but to try to get it. And they're,
Not convinced.
Well, we could use it as a hauling truck.
That's true. We could put all those ash limbs in it and drive them somewhere.
Okay, any other questions? Would someone like to make the motion, please?
Guessing not Harvey.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the application to the Ford Disaster Relief Vehicle Grant Program for Emergency Management in the amount of $70,000 with no matching funds required by the town.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. Any more? All in favor? Oh, do you have a discussion?
A point of order, I guess. Okay, we apply for the grant, say we win the grant.
has to come back through you to accept it and a town meeting.
Okay, that's what I want to know.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed, not because it's a bad idea in principle, but because the necessary need was not demonstrated.
Motion passes. I didn't mean that, excuse me. Okay, new business. As I mentioned at the beginning, when Mr. Gelston offered to give us a little update, we're going to include on new business some information from the conference and education meeting they recently attended. It's all yours.
Thank you very much. Emmett, my copier jammed, so you can share it with Cindy. This is, the actual class was 76 slides, and I'll be quick, it's the end of the day, in the meeting. And my name is on here, but two other fine folks joined me, Tracy and Cindy were there in class as well. But these are notes that I took, and if they want to add, of course, please add to them. Some of the direct copies from the syllabus, the textbook itself. But, the speakers are very good people. I mean, they weren't just professors, they were people actually in the job. Brendan Robertson, the town manager, town of Avon, and Joe Switke, finance director, town of Farmington. The course was excellent and provided many good sources for good information, which I'll show you later, and strong recommendations for tools, information, processes, and strategies, many of which we already use ourselves here, and in clear explanations and definitions. And they started the session with the highlights of the situation, the environment we're in, with the municipal budgeting, they call it the context. As we all know, many communities are facing stagnant and declining grand list growth and declining non-tax revenues. Each town seems to be doing better recently than the other towns. State grants are certainly in jeopardy, and these factors are combined with the ever-increasing demand for services and the ability or willingness of the public to support continued tax increases. We're all keenly aware of that, and what results is a very challenging situation. So they emphasize in this environment of heightened public scrutiny and economic scarcity, the keys to success are strong financial management and thoughtful and reasonable and responsible budgeting. So that's all some of you folks are quite accustomed to. I just wanted to show that a lot of people in the same boat. And they have an interesting definition of municipal budget, a financial operating plan for a given period embodying estimated expenditures for providing services and the proposed means of financing them. A balanced budget limits expenditures to available resources. And they certainly pointed out the need for a clear, understandable budget book, which we've done in the past and will continue to do, of course. It's something new. Then there's the budgeting process, which is what we're doing basically. But at the bottom of the page, do not drop the budget into the budget season. Keep watching, and we do that. But one thing especially caught my eye is they said be out in front of changes. I'll talk about that a little bit later. The next page, a list of tools, starting with the official statement, which I personally was not aware of, but that's something a lot of towns do. And now, Cindy, do we have an official statement? I lost track of that.
We issue a new official statement every time we go out to issue debt.
Right.
So,
And it says statement, but I didn't have an example here, but it's pretty impressive with it. It gives the key statistics of the town, numbers of the town, a good description of the town. So it's a one-page document that describes East Haddam financially. And then, of course, another tool is the budgets, the current budget, and as well as prior budgets. The audit report, which we just talked about. Management letters, we just talked about. And CAFR, which is a comprehensive annual financial report, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and how important it is, although there's some different discussion on that, I must admit. Rating agencies, market reports, and elected officials guide series, which you can get from GOFA, we can all read that. Robert's rules we're accustomed to, and monthly appropriations, estimated revenue status reports, which we talked about, and actuarial reports. These are all tools we need to do a good budget process. This next page is resources, and this, you may want to keep this one page, if anything, because it lists all the addresses. You can go on your computer and look up all kinds of financial stuff for government folks. And the one in the middle there, CT Gov, Municipal Fiscal Indicators. That's a lot of information. It's the same thing that CREC puts out. And unfortunately, it's a year behind, but it gives good, solid information that you can track and maybe make a plot of it for as time goes on. And what last one there, I was really quite surprised, to tell you the truth. The instructors, the speakers, pointed out how important it was for a town to have a good plan of conservation development for budgeting reasons. And the towns of Avon and Farmington use it for budgeting reasons.
they didn't call it conservation. What C did they use? They used something else.
Well, it's supposed to be conservation
I know, but
development.
he said something else, but I couldn't remember what it was.
I'm just used to calling it conservation.
I know, and when he said something different, I was like,
And the next page, who are the potential users of the budget document? And the answer is, who isn't a user of the budget document? It's pretty universal. And the budget has 5 uses. I think we're accustomed to seeing, I was accustomed to seeing 4 uses, but there's a 5th use. I'll go through all 5 right now. It's a policy document. It's a financial plan. It's an operations guide. It's a communications device. And number 5, it's a performance measurement device as well, measuring performance. And I thought that was interesting. And they have recommended budget practices and the best budget documents. They really emphasize having a good, solid budget document or documents. Synopsis of budget decisions is included in those documents, factors leading to them, implications for programs and services, spells out short and long-term goals and priorities, and discloses any and all assumptions. There's some typos in here because I didn't copy it from the other page. I tried to consolidate as much as possible, so I see a typo in here. But it's important, and they say this is important, and they emphasize this is important. Relate to the past, to the current, and future by highlighting historical significance of prior years' plans to current and future plans. This provides a bridge between budget years. This is kind of like, I think you were mentioning, long-term planning. As we do long-term planning, we can look back and see how well our long-term planning was doing. And there's a tip from Mr. Glenn Klockow. This caught my eye. Formulate and review the revenue budget first, and always use prudent estimates. In other words, you don't go in looking at anticipated expenditures. You first see how much money you got, and that sets how much you can spend. Thought that was interesting. And that's, again, the emphasize the next slide. Prepare and review your budget, revenue budget first, then your expenditure budget, period. They're pretty firm about that. This approach, and these are their words, this approach provides a superior basis for budgeting expenditures to an equal level of revenues, which keeps the budget in balance and in perspective. Now, another thing they had was, where does the money come from, speaking of being a focus on revenues? And they offered up a table for their town, which I didn't have time to make a copy of it, but
You don't need to. Take a look at your audit report. It'll tell you exactly how our town pays.
okay, very good, that's a good point. We'll have to look there. Well, anyway, it lists all these property, what's your source of revenue? And you want to cover the last 3 years. 3 years ago, 2 years ago, last year. Property tax and assessments, intergovernmental sources, which you know is up and down with the state right now. In fact, they emphasize that we ask our legislators to come to our Board of Finance meeting and explain where's the money coming from? What's the state gonna do this year? And why this and why that? I think that's a good idea. Another source is licenses, fees, and permits. Another source is charges for current services, and there's other revenues and other financing sources, like renting cell towers for, again, $20,000 a year, not bad. And next slide, the best key to expenditure approval is rational and thoughtful planning. That makes a lot of sense. And there are 3 expenditure classifications. One is personnel services, that's salaries and benefits. And the other is services and supplies. And the other is capital outlay. Getting back to personnel services, they said, you need to think about your collective bargaining far ahead of time. And I have to admit, I'm new to the Board of Finance. I don't know all, but how many, I'm gonna interrupt here for a minute. How many collective bargaining units does this town have?
8.
8. That's incredible. So of the 8, and this is what they're after, you folks know too, of the 8, what are the time periods for them to be renegotiated? Is one being renegotiated this year or 2 this year? What's next year?
Well, just to point out, if you recall what Harvey was discussing earlier about our projections on operating
Right.
budget, that's exactly the reason why we're doing that.
Right.
And the budget narrative this year will include all of that.
And what they're after here is, what's your target? You know, how, you wanna go into, make a deal, how much money do you have in your pocket to make the deal? You don't wanna make a deal that empties your pocket and takes your pants too, right? So you want to know up front, and you want to plan this out, and it gives the bargaining unit, our side, or either side, an idea, a little firmer direction, guideline, as to how much you're going to agree to. So, and I thought it was interesting coming from these guys, but I wonder how many bargaining units they have at Avon or Farmington. I bet it's not 8. For the size of our town. Anyway, I thought that was a pretty good message. It's a pretty good thing for us to do. So I see that you're ahead of me, you're already doing it, that's good. Services and supplies, and they talked about this, and there's some Board of Education people in the back of the room, right? Is that right, Tracy?
Oh, yeah.
Right. Hey, we're from the Board of Education, because they came out of the box fairly strong. There needs to be good communication between the Board of Education and Board of Finance, and we have liaison, Greg now, and so that's real good, and it's a tough job. And they also emphasized that the Board of Education is not independent. They're not on their own. They're in the boat with us.
It's funny, because, I mean, I don't know any other town, how they operate, because this is all I know, but the first selectman of Marlboro was sitting next to me for a while, and she was talking about how I mean, she's got regional too, so it's different, but, and then, the Board of Ed people in the back, they're like, nah, we don't talk to anybody, the Board of Finance, it's like, it's just weird, because we've done it this way for so long, that we have a clear understanding of what the Board of Ed, what their budget looks like, and these other ones are like, wow, we don't know, no idea.
Yeah, that's my experience too, talking to folks. But it's not the way to operate successfully. And the third is capital outlay, and we're all pretty good at capital outlay. The next one is internal control, and they got kind of passionate about this. The essential elements of an effective internal control structure are a control environment, and they say that's real important, an accounting system, that's obviously important. And the third is control policies and procedures. And they had a whole list. I won't go to them now because time limited, but you're welcome. If you want me to get a copy of this for you, I will. They have a whole list, but one thing that pointed out to me, caught my eye, I should say, is whistleblower policy. And do we have one in East Haddam? I didn't think we did, but a whistleblower policy. If somebody sees something and they don't want to make a public attraction, they wanna do it quietly, but correctly. What can they do about it? Other towns have a
They go on
whistleblower
Facebook.
policy. Go on Facebook. Yeah, that'll do it. That's right. But other towns have whistleblower policies. In fact, the town of Farmington, I'm pretty sure does. And that's something we should consider for our town. It wouldn't cost any money, I wouldn't think, but it'd be a good avenue for people to speak up. It's important to get people to speak up rather than grumble and complain. The next slide is audits and financial reports. Cindy explained our most recent audit. I won't spend much time on that. But there's something beyond the audit that Glenn Glocko, if I pronounced his last name correctly, spoke to me about at my class I went to last year. And this year again, the speakers talked about a comprehensive annual financial report. They really pushed this hard because it's an extreme benefit to the town, and there's a lot of good things about it. I don't know how much it costs, I don't know how long it takes, but we should have one at least every 5 years. They really like to see one every year, but at least every 5 years is what they told me. And the CAFR, CAFR sections are introductory, table of contents, letter from finance official, listing officials, stuff like that. Financial, it goes into all the management discussion, analysis, financial statements, notes to the financials. But basically, it goes deeper into your books than an audit does. And it also provides statistical trends and demographics. And I'm bringing it to you folks because they strongly recommended it. I have never read one myself. I don't know how much it would cost the town of East Haddam to produce, but perhaps it's something we should look at to improve our finances. And in fact, this is what they said. I didn't make this up. He said, and they had it on one of their slides, no CAFR? If your community does not prepare a CAFR, ask why not and when will we? It's a recommended practice in the governmental financial community.
So I'd like to address that. So the amount of time and energy to produce one would either require more staff or more volunteer time. And so our estimate, after our conversation for the last year and a half, speaking not only among our group, but with our financial advisor, was get your policies. You need to have financial policies in effect first, because the rating agencies won't look at the CAFR, but they'll look at the policies in order to give you a better credit rating. So that's our direction is, first we got to get these policies complete.
Okay.
Upon completion of that, we can entertain that dialogue and look at it. And maybe that's something that we have a subcommittee begin doing some work on.
And a lot of the budget suggestions we're beginning to put into place as well. And I've spoken with Todd about this in speaking to financial advisors. They do make financial policies our #1 priority, getting a budget with more performance management in it, and then with the CAFR as the third goal. But he
So
said
this
the first
is,
two
it makes sense. If we could look at over the next several budget cycles of incorporating this with the CAFR being the top of it, I think that's the when, and that's why we don't have it yet.
Are
Because,
those public? Like, could we go look at Farmington's?
yeah, you can go right online to Avon's and pull this right up. It's
Okay.
right there on the public domain. You should check it out. Just go to their website and look for it. and
The
you can
other
find
key
it. I
component
did it when I went to the first
in
meeting.
preparing a CAFR is you're submitting it to the Government Financial Officers Association, and they have different criteria than we are required for our mandatory reporting to the SEC. So it's a good thing, and I discussed it with the finance director in Farmington at length. Once you've established it, keeping it up is one thing, but
I know, the first one, I can only imagine.
first one's the hardest.
And then,
Then you update.
Just like the financial policies that
Yeah,
we're working
yeah.
on, we're spending hours and hours going over these details. But once we have it established, it should just be a meeting to just review and amend if
Right,
necessary.
right, yeah.
That's the same thing with the CAFR. It's gonna take some real hours to get one developed, but once we have these components done, it'll make it a little easier. So yes, we should have one, we should do it. Given that most of the work is being done through volunteers, I think it's just gonna be the next in the line.
Okay, very good.
we
Look
don't
forward to
get
the
paid.
policies.
This isn't a paying gig?
And I meant to say under my report, the grand list preliminary is up 1%.
1%?
preliminary. She'll certify at the end of the month.
That was just on, did she get the,
That's everything now.
everything? Okay.
And the effects of these building permits you'll see for the October 119 grand list.
Very good. Okay.
Yeah, we did buy one car, but, sorry, that's all we could do. Actually, it's a lease. It's not
At this point, we have no other new business items. I'd like to open up the floor for guest and audience comments. Are there any? There are none, so given there are none, we will, are there any other things on our, we have other on the agenda, anything I might have overlooked tonight?
Mr. Chairman, maybe I fell asleep, but the budget calendar update, did I miss that?
There's no changes to offer. I just keep it on there to highlight in case there is.
Okay, very good.
We have a motion to adjourn, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so moved. Thank you very much.
Let me turn off the,
Plug is not working. My plug isn't working.